My boss slapped me, right across the face. The sting was sharp, shocking, echoing in the sudden silence of the bright, glass-walled conference room. We were in the middle of a big client pitch, and I had corrected a number he'd gotten wrong. Nathan Cole, head of the luxury design firm where I worked as his executive assistant, didn't like being corrected, especially not in front of clients. His hand moved so fast, I didn't even see it coming. The sound hung in the air. Our colleagues froze, eyes darting anywhere but at me or Nathan. He straightened his expensive tie, his face like stone. "Handle this quietly," he ordered Alyssa, our HR director, who was also in the meeting. Then he turned back to the clients as if nothing had happened. I touched my burning cheek, the imprint of his hand already starting to feel hot. My voice was barely a whisper, but I knew he heard me. "You'll regret this." He just smirked. A few minutes later, Alyssa pulled me aside, not with concern, but with a warning to keep quiet. Later that day, I overheard her confirming to Nathan that the security footage from the conference room for that specific time block had been corrupted. Just like he ordered. The slap was erased, but the memory burned. The next morning, my cheeks still throbbed with a dull ache, a constant reminder. The first thing I did when I got to the office before anyone else arrived was access the security system logs. I had administrative privileges from helping set it up last year. I navigated to the conference room camera feed for yesterday's meeting time. Just as Alyssa had promised Nathan, the timestamp was gone. Wiped clean. Replaced by meaningless digital static, a blank space where the truth should have been. Nathan's voice from yesterday echoed in my head, cold and dismissive when he'd seen me leaving. "You're lucky to still have a job, Elena. Don't forget it." He thought he had all the power, that he could hit me and erase it like a typo. The ease with which he destroyed the evidence terrified me more than the slap itself. But staring at that static, fear turned into something else, something cold and sharp. Fear is just fuel, I reminded myself. And I knew how to make it burn slow, how to wait for the right moment. As I scanned the adjacent camera angles, trying to find anything useful, something odd caught my eye in the hallway feed capturing the conference room's exterior glass wall. Reflections. That's what Nathan and Alyssa hadn't thought about. The main camera inside the conference room might have been wiped, but the sleek glass partitions acted like mirrors. I spent an hour reviewing footage from the secondary camera position down the hall, the one angled towards the outside of the conference room. It captured people walking by, the coffee machine, and, crucially, the reflections on the glass wall. There it was, partially obscured, distorted by the angle, but unmistakable. The reflection showed Nathan's arm swinging, the jolt of impact, my head snapping back. It wouldn't hold up alone in court, maybe, but it was proof. Proof he couldn't erase. My hands trembled slightly as I downloaded the segment, encrypting it immediately. I saved the file deep within the company server, nested in a rarely accessed archive folder innocuously named Q1budgets_drafts_2022. He thought he'd wiped the slate clean. He was wrong. Revenge doesn't always start with a shout. Sometimes it starts with quiet, meticulous data entry, hidden in plain sight. As I closed the file, I overheard Nathan's voice booming from his office down the hall, ending a call. "All right, talk soon, baby girl." My stomach tightened. Who was he calling baby girl at the office? It didn't take long to figure out who baby girl was. Later that day, I saw Nathan and Alyssa, our head of HR, leaving a supposed client meeting off-site together. Her hand brushed his arm just a little too long as they waited for the elevator. Alyssa was married, ambitious, and clearly completely entangled with Nathan. That explained everything. The instant erasure of the footage, her warning to me instead of supporting me, the complete lack of any HR follow-up. Her job was to protect the company, but she was protecting him and herself. Their affair was the shield Nathan used. He wasn't just my boss. He was insulated by the very person meant to hold him accountable. The irony was almost funny. The man who thought he could humiliate me without consequence was already compromised, tied to a secret that could ruin them both. They played their roles perfectly during the day, professional, distant, all business. But I started noticing the small things, Shared glances across the boardroom. Late-night emails marked urgent. That seemed anything but. The way Alyssa's perfumes sometimes lingered in Nathan's office after she left. They thought their secret was safe. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when someone starts looking. And I realized Alyssa's ambition might be her weak point. Alyssa wasn't just protecting Nathan. She was protecting her own career. I learned through casual office chatter that she was shortlisted for a major promotion, Vice President of Human Resources for the entire parent company. The decision rested with the board of directors, and her image as a competent, ethical leader was crucial. That gave me an idea. It was time to introduce some doubt. I went to a public library far from my neighborhood, used a guest computer, and created a brand new, anonymous email address, whistleinsider@protonmail.com. From there, I carefully crafted a message to the board's confidential ethics committee. I didn't mention the slap, not yet. Instead, I focused entirely on Alyssa. I detailed a pattern of relationship bias and compromised judgment in her handling of employee matters, specifically citing favoritism towards Nathan Cole. I attached proof. Anonymized logs showing them accessing secure meeting rooms after hours, copies of hotel receipts I'd found while filing Nathan's expenses, separate rooms, but always the same hotel on the same nights, and screenshots of late-night texts accidentally glimpsed on Alyssa's unlocked computer screen. I provided dates, times, and specific instances of her overlooking Nathan's policy violations. I didn't sign it. The evidence spoke for itself. The truth doesn't need a name, just the right audience, and impeccable timing. A week dragged by. The office hummed with a nervous energy I recognized as gossip. Then the email landed in everyone's inbox. Alyssa was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Effective immediately. Nathan didn't react publicly, but later that day, he called me into his office. The door clicked shut behind me. He didn't offer me a seat. He just stood by his window, looking out at the city skyline, then turned. His eyes were cold fire. "Did you send that email, Elena?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." He took a step closer. "Don't play dumb with me. This has your fingerprints all over it. Leaking false information to the board." I didn't flinch. The board has an ethics committee for a reason. If someone reported concerns, maybe they had cause. He smiled then, that slick, chilling smile of a man who believes he's untouchable. "You think this makes you clever? You're a nobody, Elena. An assistant. People like you are replaceable, disposable." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "And nobodies who cause trouble," he added, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They just disappear." My heart pounded, but I met his gaze. Silently, I tapped the face of my smartwatch, activating the voice recorder. Every single venomous word was now being saved. The next day, the staff restructuring was announced. It wasn't a surprise, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. 3 assistants were let go: Maria, Chloe, and Sam. All friends of mine. All people I confided in, shared lunches with, relied on for support. It was a calculated move. Nathan was cutting me off, isolating me, removing anyone who might back me up or corroborate my story. I watched them pack their belongings into cardboard boxes, trying to hold back tears. Maria gave me a quick, tight hug. "Be careful, Elena," she whispered. Chloe just looked numb. Sam managed a weak smile. Guess we drew the short straws. Nathan watched the entire scene from his glass-walled office, perfectly composed, sipping an espresso. He didn't even have the decency to look away. He wanted me to see it, to understand that he could erase people just as easily as he erased footage. He thought he was breaking me, showing me how powerless I was. But watching my friends leave didn't make me want to quit. It solidified my resolve. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a quick strike. It's enduring, surviving long enough to witness the villain's own slow, inevitable implosion. As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from a block number. 6 words. "Meet me outside if you want him gone." My first instinct was suspicion. Was this another trap? A setup orchestrated by Nathan? But something about the bluntness of the message felt different. I slipped out the side entrance during a quiet moment, heart pounding. Behind the sculpted fountain in the small plaza next to our building stood Daniel, one of the junior IT engineers. He was usually quiet, almost invisible, the kind of guy who fixed your laptop without making eye contact. Now his eyes were sharp, focused. He saw the text, I said quietly, glancing around. Daniel shook his head. Encrypted message. Untraceable number. Nathan's tech skills are basic at best. He relies on intimidation, not sophistication. He looked back towards the gleaming office tower. You're not the only one he's hurt, Elena. Not by a long shot. He spoke quickly, telling me about years of complaints against Nathan that Alyssa had buried. Sexual harassment claims quietly settled with NDAs. Bullying accusations dismissed as personality conflicts. Talented employees driven out. Daniel himself had been passed over for promotions Nathan gave to less qualified cronies. He'd been documenting it all, waiting for an opportunity. He built a fortress of silence, Daniel said, his voice tight with anger. But you cracked it when you went after Alyssa. Now people are starting to talk. He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a small, unlabeled hard drive. This, he whispered, pressing it into my hand. This one's got teeth. I waited until I was home, doors locked, curtains drawn, before plugging Daniel's hard drive into my personal laptop. My screen immediately filled with files, meticulously organized folders dating back 5 years. It was an archive of Nathan Cole's corruption. There were emails promising promotions in exchange for loyalty, a clear code for silence or complicity, text message chains detailing inappropriate relationships with junior staff, audio snippets recorded secretly during closed-door meetings, capturing Nathan bullying employees and making sexist remarks. Most damning were the financial records, scanned receipts for lavish client dinners at strip clubs, invoices for consulting fees paid to shell companies that seemed to trace back to city officials who'd approved lucrative zoning variances for Nathan's personal real estate projects. It was worse than I imagined. Nathan wasn't just a cruel boss. He was actively corrupt, using the company as his personal piggy bank and playground, protected by Alyssa's position in HR. Daniel was right. This drive had teeth, enough to bring Nathan down completely. But the sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming and potentially dangerous. Releasing it all at once could backfire, make it look like a personal vendetta. I needed to be strategic, patient. Like a spider, I told myself again, carefully building the web, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My phone pinged. An email notification. The sender, m.carter@board-executive. Subject, Nathan Cole. My breath caught. Mrs. Carter? A senior board member? The message was brief. Elena, I believe we need to talk. Off the record. We met 2 days later in the quiet lounge of a boutique hotel downtown, far from the prying eyes of the office. Margaret Carter was in her late 60s, elegant, sharp, with eyes that missed nothing. She had been on the board for over a decade and commanded immense respect. She got straight to the point. Elena, the anonymous email about Alyssa Ray's flags. Serious ones. We launched our own discreet inquiry, and frankly, what we're finding is deeply concerning. It goes beyond HR issues. She paused, stirring her tea. We've suspected Nathan's management style was problematic for some time. Good results often mask bad behavior in this business. But we lacked concrete proof. I hesitated for only a second. This was my chance. I explained briefly about the slap, the erased footage, Nathan's threats, the targeted firings of my friends. Mrs. Carter listened intently, her expression hardening. Then I took out the hard drive Daniel had given me. This contains documented evidence of bullying, harassment, potential financial misconduct, and more, going back several years, I said. Collected by someone within the company who was afraid to come forward. Mrs. Carter took the drive. Thank you, Elena. This requires careful handling, but I assure you, the board takes such matters extremely seriously. As I prepared to leave, I made a decision. I held back one file, the distorted video reflection of the slap. That piece of evidence was personal. Justice for the company wasn't necessarily complete justice for me. I needed to keep that card close. The shift in the office atmosphere was almost immediate. Nathan was still present, but his usual swagger was gone, replaced by a forced calmness that didn't quite reach his eyes. He stopped shouting orders, stopped holding impromptu strategy meetings that were really just opportunities for him to belittle people. He even stopped leering at the interns. An email circulated announcing that Nathan Cole was undergoing an internal performance review by the board. Everyone knew what that meant.
He was under scrutiny.
Alyssa was still on leave, her office dark and empty. The silence emanating from Nathan's corner office felt heavy, charged. People avoided making eye contact with him. Meetings happened without him. Decisions were being made around him. For the first time since the slap, I allowed myself a small measure of hope. Maybe it was almost over. Maybe the system, slow and imperfect as it was, would actually work. Nathan even gave me a tight-lipped nod in the hallway one morning, a pathetic attempt at normalcy that almost made me laugh. He looked cornered, diminished. The air in the building felt lighter, cleaner. People seemed to be breathing easier, myself included. It was a strange, unsettling calm, the kind that often precedes a storm. Then, one afternoon, I returned from lunch to find a small, folded note tucked under my keyboard.
No envelope, no signature.
Just 4 chilling words. You think you've won? Check your car. My blood ran cold. I almost didn't go down to the parking garage. Part of me wanted to ignore the note, pretend it wasn't real, just another pathetic attempt at intimidation. But I knew I couldn't. Ignoring Nathan was dangerous. I took the elevator down, my hand hovering over the emergency call button. The garage was dimly lit, mostly empty in the mid-afternoon. My sensible sedan was parked in its usual spot near the stairwell. As I got closer, I saw it. The driver's side window was shattered, glittering shards of glass sprayed across the asphalt and the driver's seat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I cautiously peered inside. Nothing seemed stolen. My old umbrella was still on the passenger floor, the reusable grocery bags still in the back. But then I saw it, placed deliberately on the dashboard, weighted down by a chunk of broken glass. A photograph. It was an old one, taken years ago, of me and my mother laughing together on a park bench. It had been torn neatly in half, right down the middle, separating our smiling faces. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just vandalism. This was personal. This was a message. He was telling me he knew what mattered to me, and he could hurt me where it counted. He thought breaking my window and tearing a photo would scare me into silence. He was wrong. All he did was confirm how desperate he was. All he did was hand me the final piece I needed, clear, undeniable motive for escalating things beyond the boardroom. Some men never learn. When you corner a quiet woman, push her past her breaking point, she doesn't just break. She becomes something else entirely. Something sharp, something focused, something ready to burn it all down. I took out my phone, not to call security, but to call Nina Reyes, my friend at the city news desk. Nina, I said, my voice steady now, cold. Remember that favor you owe me? It's time to collect. Nina met me at a coffee shop an hour later, her reporter's instincts already buzzing. Shattered car window, torn photo? Elena, this is serious. You need to file a police report. I shook my head. A police report gets filed away. This needs sunlight, Nina. Maximum exposure. I slid a small, encrypted USB drive across the table. The one containing the video reflection of the slap. This is footage of Nathan Cole assaulting me in the office conference room weeks ago, I explained. HR erased the main camera feed, but they missed this reflection. Nina's eyes widened as I quickly recounted the story, the slap, the cover-up, Alyssa's suspension, the board's investigation, and now, the vandalism. He's escalating because he's cornered, Nina murmured, already thinking angles. Okay, here's what we do. We leak the video anonymously first. Build public pressure. Blur your face for now, protect your identity until you're ready. I agreed. Just make sure the audio is clear. His words, his tone, that's important. Nina got to work immediately. She had contacts at a viral news aggregator site. Within 48 hours, The story exploded. Video. Luxury design firm CEO appears to assault female employee during meeting. The blurred footage, coupled with the clear audio of the slap and Nathan's dismissive remarks, was damning. Millions of views overnight. Twitter hashtags demanding accountability. News outlets picking up the story. The company's switchboard crashed from the volume of calls. The firm issued a weak statement about investigating the incident, but the damage was done. Public outrage was swift and brutal. Nathan Cole's carefully curated image was shattered, just like my car window. And this time, there was no erasing it. He showed up at my apartment building just before midnight. I saw him from my window, pacing on the sidewalk below, looking disheveled, frantic. The doorman buzzed up. "Mr. Cole is here, Ms. Ward. He insists on speaking with you. Tell him I'm not available, and if he doesn't leave the premises, I'll call the police." I replied, my voice steady. A few minutes later, my own intercom buzzed violently. I ignored it. Then came the pounding on my apartment door.
Elena.
"Open this door. We need to talk." Nathan's voice was muffled but loud, laced with panic. "You've ruined me. Do you understand? My reputation, my career, everything." I walked silently to the door, checked the peephole. He looked wild, desperate. I held up my phone, making sure the screen showing the active recording app was visible through the lens.
He saw it.
His fist froze mid-pound. The color drained from his face as he realized his every word, his every threat, was being captured. "You think this is funny?" he whispered, his voice hoarse now. "You think destroying me will make you powerful?" I didn't answer.
Didn't need to.
The phone was my shield, the recording my weapon. He stared at the peephole for another long moment, the fight visibly draining out of him. Then he turned, stumbled back towards the elevator. A broken man, realizing the light he feared most was now pointed directly at him. Funny how quickly predators become prey when their victims refuse to stay silent. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Nathan. The tabloids, smelling blood, descended. Photos of him, looking disheveled outside my apartment, splashed across gossip sites. Details of his affair with Alyssa, now confirmed by anonymous sources, likely disgruntled employees emboldened by the scandal, became public knowledge. His wife, a prominent socialite I vaguely knew from company events, filed for divorce the very next morning, citing irreconcilable differences in a statement released by her high-powered attorney. Nathan vanished. He stopped coming into the office altogether. Rumors flew. He was in hiding, he was having a breakdown, he was under formal investigation not just by the board, but by financial regulators looking into the irregularities Daniel had uncovered on the hard drive. Mrs. Carter confirmed the latter to me in a brief, discreet phone call. "The evidence you provided opened doors we didn't know existed, Elena. Thank you." The company, desperate to control the narrative, scrambled to distance themselves from him. They offered me a settlement. A formal meeting, this time with the company's external legal counsel. They slid a thick folder across the polished table. Inside, an offer, $200,000 in exchange for my silence, a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement covering everything related to Nathan Cole and the recent unfortunate incidents. My emotional distress, they called it. I looked at the number, then at the lawyers' expectant faces. They still thought this was about money.
They still didn't understand.
I picked up the pen they offered, its weight feeling significant in my hand. The two lawyers across the table exchanged relieved glances, visibly relaxing. They thought they had bought my silence, contained the damage. $200,000, one of them said smoothly, paid out immediately upon signing. And of course, the company expresses its sincere regret for any distress Ms. Ward experienced. Sincere regret. They had a funny way of showing it. I scanned the non-disclosure agreement. It was ironclad, covering every possible form of communication, interviews, social media, books, even casual conversations. It bound me to perpetual silence about Nathan, Alyssa, the slap, the cover-up, everything. I smiled politely, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips that didn't quite reach my eyes. "This seems acceptable," I murmured, pretending to read the fine print one last time. Then, I signed my name at the bottom with a flourish.
Elena V. Rossi.
The lawyers nodded, satisfied, gathered their copies, and escorted me out with practiced courtesy. They probably went straight back to the board to report their success. What they didn't know, what no one at the company knew, was that Elena W. Rossi wasn't my legal name. Not anymore. It was never about the money. It was about reclaiming my story, my voice. And a piece of paper signed by a ghost couldn't stop that. 6 months earlier, long before the slap, long before Nathan's world started to crumble, I had made a quiet, personal decision. After my mother passed away, I decided to legally reclaim her maiden name, Rossi. It felt like a way to honor her, a connection to a part of my heritage I hadn't explored. The legal process was straightforward but took time. New driver's license, updated social security card, bank accounts switched over. Crucially, I hadn't updated my name in the company's HR system yet. My employee file, payroll, everything still listed me as Elena Ward. It wasn't intentional deception at the time, just bureaucratic lag. But now it was my trump card. The NDA they believed secured my silence was signed by Elena W. Rossi. The settlement check was made out to Elena Ward. Legally, the contract was likely unenforceable. The person who signed didn't match the employee record or the payee. They thought they had paid off Elena Ward, the victim. They had no idea Elena Rossi, the woman ready to speak, was already preparing her next move. While they were congratulating themselves on containing the scandal, I was at home, outlining my story. Not for a lawsuit, not for revenge, but for the record. For every other person who'd been silenced or erased. I booked an interview slot on a popular independent podcast known for its deep dives into corporate misconduct, using a pseudonym, Anna R., just to be safe until I was ready. The podcast episode, titled The Executive Sweet Slap and the $200,000 Silence, aired on a Friday evening. Using the pseudonym, Anna R., I walked the listeners through everything, my voice calm but unwavering. I detailed the slap in the conference room, Nathan's chilling order to Alyssa, the erased footage, the reflection I found, Alyssa's suspension, Nathan's threats, the targeted firings, Daniel's hard drive exposing financial corruption, the vandalism of my car, and finally, the company's attempt to buy my silence with an NDA I never legally signed under my current name. I didn't name Nathan or the firm directly, but I provided enough specific, verifiable details, the industry, the city, the timeline, the nature of the financial misconduct hinted at, that anyone paying attention could connect the dots. The podcast host was skilled, asking pointed questions that allowed me to lay out the systemic failure. It wasn't just about one man's violence, it was about a corporate culture that enabled and protected him. The listener reaction was explosive. The episode went viral almost instantly.
Online forum liep.
Comment sections overflowed with outrage and support. Amateur sleuths quickly identified the company based on the details I'd shared. The blurred video, leaked suddenly, had context. By Saturday morning, #Slapgate and #company name exposed were trending. The $200,000 NDA became the symbol of corporate corruption. The silence they tried to buy had amplified my voice 1,000-fold. The fallout was nuclear. Monday morning, the firm's stock opened down 27%. Major clients began publicly distancing themselves. The board, facing immense pressure from shareholders and the public, convened an emergency meeting. By noon, Nathan Cole was officially fired, terminated for cause. Alyssa, still technically on leave, submitted her resignation, effective immediately. The board issued a public statement announcing a full-scale, independent investigation into the company's culture and practices, promising sweeping reforms. They established an anonymous hotline for employee complaints, suddenly eager to hear the voices they had ignored for years. The building, which once felt like Nathan's personal kingdom, buzzed with uncertainty and a strange sense of liberation. People looked at me differently in the hallways, not with pity, but with a kind of quiet respect. Messages flooded my personal email, forwarded from the anonymous podcast contact. Former employees, people I didn't even know, sharing their own stories of Nathan's abuse, thanking me for speaking up, telling me I wasn't alone. Each message felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't realized was missing. The isolation Nathan had tried to impose was shattered. But amidst the flood of support, one short, cryptic message arrived from Daniel's secure address. Bored cleaning house. But he's not done fighting. Watch your back. He was right. Nathan wouldn't go down without one last desperate attempt. Nathan's counterattack came swiftly, but predictably. His high-priced lawyers filed a defamation lawsuit against Anna R., the podcast host and the podcast platform, claiming the episode contained malicious falsehoods that had destroyed his reputation and career prospects. It was a desperate, angry move, more about lashing out than any real legal strategy. He made one critical, revealing mistake. The lawsuit specifically named Elena Ward as the likely identity behind Anna R., citing the timing of my departure. I had quietly resigned the day after signing the invalid NDA and the details shared in the podcast. His lawyers argued that Elena Ward, disgruntled former employee, had fabricated the story for financial gain and revenge, violating the NDA she had signed. They demanded millions in damages. It was exactly the opening I needed. My own lawyer responded immediately, filing a motion to dismiss. The grounds were simple. The plaintiff, Nathan Cole, had sued the wrong person. The NDA was signed by Elena W. Rossi, not Elena Ward. Furthermore, the settlement check was issued to Elena Ward, but cashed after my legal name change to Elena Rossi was finalized, meaning the company itself had failed basic due diligence. The lawsuit inadvertently proved my point. They didn't even know who I really was. The legal blunder became another news cycle, highlighting Nathan's incompetence and desperation. His lawyer, facing embarrassment and likely sanctions, quietly withdrew from the case a week later. Nathan's reputation, already in tatters, sank even lower. He became a cautionary tale in business journals. And my story? It wasn't just a viral moment anymore. It was becoming a movement. The defamation suit's collapse created even more buzz around my story. People weren't just talking about corporate abuse. They were talking about identity, silence, and the power of reclaiming your own narrative. That's when the emails from publishers started arriving. Several major houses expressed interest in turning my experience into a book. At first, I hesitated. Did I really want to relive everything again? Put it all down in permanent ink? But then I thought about the messages I'd received, the women who'd shared their own stories, the feeling that my voice had somehow unlocked something for others. I signed with a publisher known for tackling tough subjects. I spent the next 3 months writing, pouring everything onto the page. Not just the events, but the fear, the isolation, the slow burn of anger turning into strategy, the complex emotions of seeing a predator finally fall. I titled it The Silence They Tried to Buy, Notes from the Corporate Battlefield. The writing process was cathartic, exhausting, but ultimately empowering. When the book launched, the response was overwhelming. It hit the bestseller lists within weeks. Reviews praised its honesty and unflinching look at power dynamics. Book clubs chose it. Universities assigned it in business ethics classes. Women and men wrote to me from all over the world, saying my story gave them the courage to speak up about their own experiences. It wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told to handle things quietly. The book's success put the design firm in an impossible position. They were trying to rebuild their reputation, implementing new policies, hiring consultants to preach about workplace safety. But my story, now a bestseller, was a constant reminder of their past failures. One afternoon, I received a call from Mrs. Carter, the board member who had taken Daniel's hard drive. "Elena," she said, her voice careful, "the board has been discussing your impact. We've undergone significant changes here. New leadership, new protocols. We were wondering if you might consider coming back." I was stunned into silence. Come back. I finally managed. As what? "We need someone to oversee operations, ensure these new policies are actually implemented effectively. Someone who understands the problems from the inside. Someone the employees trust."
She paused.
"We'd like to offer you the position of Director of Operations." The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me, the woman whose public revelations had nearly destroyed them, to come back and fix their mess. Part of me wanted to laugh in her face, but another, more strategic part saw the opportunity. What better way to ensure real change than to be the one implementing it? What better way to honor the people Nathan had hurt than to create a workplace where such abuse couldn't happen again? Send me the offer in writing, I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside. I'll consider it. They didn't expect me to say yes, but I did. Walking back into that building as director of operations was surreal. The familiar lobby, the elevators I used to ride with dread, the hallways where I'd learned to make myself invisible, it all felt different now, charged with a new energy. My new office wasn't Nathan's old corner suite that had been symbolically dismantled, but it was spacious, with a view overlooking the city. Employees I barely knew stopped me to say hello, to thank me, to tell me they were glad I was back. There was still tension, of course. Some executives who had been complicit in Nathan's reign avoided eye contact. But overall, the atmosphere was one of cautious optimism, a sense that real change was possible. On my first day, while setting up my computer, my new company phone rang. Caller ID blocked. I almost didn't answer, but my instincts told me to. Hello. A shaky voice, barely recognizable.
Elena?
It's Nathan. Silence stretched between us. What could he possibly want? I just wanted to say. He struggled for words. I read your book. Another pause. I lost everything because of you. His voice wasn't angry anymore, just hollow, empty. I thought about all the things I could say, all the accusations I could hurl back. Instead, I said softly, "No, Nathan. You lost everything because you thought I was nothing." I heard him inhale sharply, a sound like a gasp or a sob. Then, I quietly ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with a profound sense of peace. Victory didn't need shouting. It just needed truth. Weeks turned into months. Implementing change was slow, challenging work. Undoing years of toxic culture required more than just new policies. It required rebuilding trust, empowering employees, and holding managers accountable. There were setbacks, moments of resistance, times I wondered if I'd made the right decision coming back. But seeing the gradual shifts, junior designers speaking up in meetings, HR actually investigating complaints thoroughly, a sense of psychological safety returning, kept me going. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, an interoffice envelope landed on my desk. No return address, just my name typed on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. It wasn't company letterhead. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible in places, but I recognized it immediately as Nathan's. It wasn't a letter full of excuses or blame. There were no threats, no lingering anger. Just 5 words scratched out in blue ink. "You were right about me." I stared at the simple sentence for a long time. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was an admission, a concession, perhaps the closest thing to accountability he was capable of. It didn't bring triumph or satisfaction, not even pity. Just a quiet sense of closure, the final page turning on a long, painful chapter. I folded the note carefully, slid it into the back of my desk drawer beneath a stack of budget reports, and closed the drawer firmly. Then I buzzed my assistant. "Yes, Elena?" My assistant, Maya, answered promptly. "Maya, could you please schedule the Q3 review meeting with the design leads? And remind them I want concrete metrics on employee retention and project diversity this time." "Right away," she confirmed. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. The city lights blurred into points of color below. I thought about the reflection I'd seen in the conference room glass wall nearly a year ago, a distorted image of violence and betrayal. Now, when I walked past that same glass wall each morning, I saw my own reflection clearly. Steady, unbroken, unapologetic. The woman staring back wasn't a victim anymore. She wasn't invisible. She was the director of operations, a best-selling author, a survivor who had turned silence into strength. That slap hadn't defined me. It hadn't destroyed me. It had simply revealed a part of myself I hadn't known existed, the part that wouldn't back down, the part that knew how to fight back not with fists, but with facts, patience, and unwavering resolve. Revenge wasn't about watching Nathan crumble. It was about rebuilding myself into someone unshakable. It wasn't about shouting. It was about standing so tall, speaking so clearly that they couldn't reach you, couldn't say, "What do I do now?" Tessa asked, still holding the letter that confirmed her worst fears and validated her deepest insecurities simultaneously. "I can't tell you what to do," I said. "But I can tell you what I'm going to do. I choose boundaries." I laid out my final terms with the same clarity I'd used throughout this entire ordeal. You keep the apology posts up. They stay public and pinned. We go no contact for 6 months, no calls, no texts, no family dinners where we pretend everything's fine. After 6 months, we can try to rebuild, but slowly and on my terms. And the family gossip about my marriage, my miscarriage, my life, that's off limits forever. She nodded, tears falling silently. "I understand," she whispered. "I wouldn't want to see me either." "It's not about punishment," I explained. "It's about healing. I need space to grieve my baby without wondering what you're saying about it. Josh needs to rebuild his reputation without your shadow. And you need to figure out who you are without Colin, without the competition you created between us." She folded the letter and stood up. "For what it's worth," she said, "I'm sorry. Not just for the lies, but for needing you to be broken, so I could feel whole." I watched her walk away across the park, carrying the evidence of her husband's betrayal and the weight of her own choices. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for telling the truth. He tried the same thing with me, but no one believed me. You gave me validation." It was from Andrea, the paralegal. I realized then that this hadn't been just about my healing or my justice. Sometimes standing up to cruelty creates ripples that reach people you never knew were drowning. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Feminine Revenge has got more thrilling stories for you.